Have you ever seen, like, you know, all the gyms you trained over the years? Have you ever seen guys that will say on your talent and say Shakur's talent, but life took them another, like, they didn't live up to that? Have you seen that personally, where guys you thought would have definitely been, but they got lost in the...
Every day.
Yep.
Every day. You know, some might call them gym fighters.
Yeah.
Because we see them as a fighter that's so talented, but maybe the streets didn't got to him, maybe girls didn't got to him, maybe they ain't got no heart, maybe they got all the skills in the world, but no heart. You know, maybe they're just not motivated to train hard because they so skilled and talented. So you come across all different types of fighters when you're in the gym, you know, and the cream always rise to the top. That little kid that's been putting that work in every day from start to finish and listening and studying and doing everything that he have to do is going to be the one that rise every single time.
Yeah. And obviously on your way up, I mean, there's a really good story that Tim Bradley tells how he, you know, he needed sparring, and for one of it was a Pacquiao, he was getting ready?
Nah, he was fighting Casamiro and Devin Alexander.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So you came in pretty much straight off the plane, straight to sparring, and you surprised him first day. Yeah. For people that haven't seen that with Tim Bradley talk, like, how did that go? Like, he sort of said, you're definitely not a sparring partner.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I went in there. It's crazy because we had the same promotional company, same manager, and my manager calls my coach and asks him if we have a 140-pounder to go sparring. And he was like, nah, but I got Bud. And he like, nah, Bud too small. Cause I was fighting at 35 at the time. And he was just like, nah, Bud too small. And he was like, well, who you need him for? He was like, Tim, and he just broke some guy ribs and he's sending people home. He was like, I tell you what, if he get whooped the first sparring match, then you send him home. You know what I mean? He was just like, all right. He was like, all right, I got Terence Crawford for you. He 135 and blah, blah, blah. And then they was like, well, we need a southpaw. And they was like, he can go southpaw. All right, cool. We'll try him out. Because they was desperate. They needed work. So the first day, he was just like, man, what the fuck? He was like, man, you ain't no sparring partner. And I was like, why you say that? He was like, man, you a world champ. I was like, man, I appreciate it. He looked at me and was like, nah, like, I'm serious. He was like, who you with? I was like, I'm with Top Rank. And he was like, who your manager? I said, Cameron. He said, hold up. He called Cameron. He was just like, you know, what y'all doing with him? And he was like, don't nobody want to fight him. He was like, let me buy him out his contract. They was like, no, he ain't going nowhere. And then he was like, well, y'all need to start fighting him because he just whooped my ass and he ain't no sparring partner. And then, like, that's what I say when I say, you know, you keep putting the work in, the opportunities, when they come, you got to be prepared and you got to be ready for it. Because had I not been in the gym, I wouldn't have been prepared to go in there and spar.
And spar someone at that level at his peak too.
Yeah, not at all. So, you know, just me standing in the gym, working hard, trying to get better each and every day that I step foot in the gym is what prepared me to go in there and spar, you know, a world champion at that time.
And that's why I tell a lot of my fighters, you younger guys at the 4-6 round level, don't go mentioning I'm in training camp, because it's not such thing as training camp. You should be training all year round. Different when you're fighting at the Gambosis level, the Bud level, where you fight only a few times a year. But you know, when you're up and coming, you need to be in the gym constantly, because you can get that phone call for someone pulls out and there's a slot there to fight a big name. You need to take that with both hands. So all you up and comers, man, don't go talking about training camps. You're training all year round. Terence, obviously your first world title win, Ricky Burns. You went over to the home country of him, got that monkey off your back, that first world title. I know we spoke about it before. I know, but tell the crowd about just winning the first one and doing it in the other guy's backyard against a very good 3-division world champion himself.
Oh, it was real good feeling. Going all the way to Scotland, you know, to beat the hometown kid, to 2-division world champion.
At the time, you become 3, yeah.
You know, no, he was 2. He was 130 and 135.
But after you, I think he become 3. Yeah.
And so I'm just like, they didn't want me to go at first. They wanted Beltran to fight him again. And I was like, nah, this is my time. They wanted to pay me step aside money. And I was like, nah, I ain't stepping aside. I said, I'm going over there, I'm taking the belt, and then he can fight me next. You know, and that's what I did. I went over there, I beat Ricky Burns, and then I came back. They said, all right, well, you want to fight in your hometown, you got to fight Gamboa. So I don't care who I fight, just put him in the ring. You know, that's just the confidence and belief that I had in myself. I beat Gamboa, and then I fought Beltran, you know, for the icing. You know, I won Fighter of the Year that year. I was on pound for pound list that year, and I ain't left since. So 2014 was my first, you know, showing on the pound for pound list, and then it just kept going up from there.
Obviously, you've just, you know, beaten Canelo at super middleweight, and you've, you know, obviously welterweight, and then you even had a 154 title. What version of Terence Crawford do you think at the time is where you're at? Like, I know you can say any division, but everyone's got more of a favourite. What division out of all the titles you've won would you say that's, you know? I
was at my best?
Yeah. Or you're way up in history. You go, at that time, at that weight, nobody touches me.
Probably 147.
Really? 147?
Yeah, 147.
Yeah.
I was at the peak. I was comfortable. I was strong. You know, I had less injuries. You know, now on the tail end, that's when the injuries started coming. But the beginning, nah, I was at the peak. Yeah, that in the end of 140 going into 147.
Yeah,
was the peak of my career.
Yeah. So he was undisputed at obviously 140, which was awesome. But to go up to the 147, I mentioned the card before against Errol Spence. Like, Errol, massive respect to him. You've never seen a 50-50 fight on paper so one-sided. I remember that day, probably might have spoke to Luke that day earlier. So I had my coffee, had my snacks, told the missus and the kids stay out of the room. It's fight day. And I was obviously backing Bud, but I'm like, this is a great fight. Finally, two guys done it together. They done it through a phone call, kept out all the bullshit that goes on in boxing because of, you know, TV networks and managers. They shook hands of the way, like two respectable gentlemen that I haven't seen for a long time, because sometimes all the bullshit in the sport, the trash talking. Two guys said, let's do it. And mate, you just, I said it was the most one-sided 50-50 fight I've ever seen. Did you always know, like, I mean, it's hard to always know until you get in there, but did you always know you had Errol's number, or just that it become, you know, a bit easier than what you even expected?
No.
I mean, it wasn't easy.
I would say, you know, I knew how it was going to go from the jump.
Yeah.
You know, if
he was saying he was the big fish and the big whale. And
if you recall, you know, before I stepped foot in the 147 division, I called all of them out.
Yeah, and Pacquiao couldn't, you know, his team wouldn't come.
I wanted to fight all the champions.
Yeah.
You know, for my first fight, you know, because I knew me and Errol, he was being ducked by all the other champions. And I knew my style would be bad for him, for any of them, you know. And for that matter, that's why it took us to make the fight, because they knew it, you know, and that's why they was just like, nah. So they just try to age me out, you know, let him get a little older, and then we'll fight him later on in his career. But being that I was undisputed and I went the WBO route because Pacquiao was the top guy at the time. So I thought Pacquiao was going to win against Jeff Horn. So I beat Pacquiao. My name is here now. Now I'm the man in the division.
That marquee.
That's me thinking. You know, Pacquiao lose. So I said, all right, well, me and Jeff Horn going to fight. That's just it. After me and Jeff Horn fight, you know, before the fight, they was like, he don't even have a title. All right, cool. Now I got a title. Oh, he's on the wrong side of the street. He with top rank. I'm like, all right, cool. I just keep winning, keep doing what I'm doing until, you know, the time comes. Errol Spence, he want to be undisputed. He can't be undisputed without, fighting me, and we talked about it. We made the fight happen, and, the rest is history.
You told me when you went up to 154 that the time before Tim lost to Fundora, Tim Tszyu, he was probably a guy that you're looking at. Good name, coming from Australia, whole country behind him. The loss over the cut, the cut was one of the big reasons, but over the loss to Fundora, that sort of ruined it. But there was a chance you were looking. He was on your radar.
I tried to fight Tim Tszyu before he fought Fundora.
Yeah.
And they basically was like, nah, they want to go the Fundora route, being that Tim was with PBC.
Yeah, that's right.
So they like, man, he not about to do this to us again. He just beat Smith. So basically they talked him out of it and whatnot. So Fundora get the victory. He got 2 titles. All right, cool. I want to fight Fundora.
PBC again.
They said no. They said, his handler said, nah, we want to fight Spence. Spence is a bigger fight than you, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Spence is a bigger fight than me. I just beat him, but okay. Cool. Y'all don't want to fight me. I'm going to fight the #1 guy in the division, which was Majimov. That's how me and Majimov got to fight. So me and Majimov fight. Prior to that, when I was at 147, I was already calling out Canelo. I was already saying I'll move up 3 weight classes and fight Canelo. When me and Turkey went to watch him fight, he put it on. What's the dude's name? From New York.
Belanga. Yeah.
We watched him fight Belanga, and I said, he can't beat me. Then we went to the UFC fight. And that's when they was calling me Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it was just like, man, this dude can't beat me.
Yeah.
And they was like, man, get a fight at 160 or 168 before you go in there and fight him. I said, I don't need no fights. I said, he can't beat me. And so they was like, all right, well, what you want to do? I said, I want to fight Canelo. So they was like, he ain't going to fight you right now. He don't got nothing to prove. All right. So I was like, all right, I'll take a fight. We're going to make history. We're going to be a 4-weight division champion. I fought Majimov, boom. Got that fight out the way. All right, now what you want to do? I want to fight Canelo. Sure you want to fight Canelo? Sure, I want to fight Canelo. Okay, it's a tough fight, but I'm going to do it for you. All right, we sign up, fight Canelo. Now we beat Canelo. Now what's left? Nothing.
Nah, I was saying that in the car. It was not.
At first, I was like, all right, well, go down to 160 and do it again.
Become 6 times.
Yeah, and four division undisputed.
Yeah.
But Janabek popped.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
was that a possible fight if he did it, or was that one because he would have beat Lara and had 3 belts?
Whoever would have won that fight would have been 3. They would have had 3 of the titles.
Has that ruined it then? That test.
Yeah. So it's just like, and I'm not.
That's it now. Yeah. Nah.
It's cool. It just was a thought. It's like, do it again. You can do it again. Go down to 160 and, dare to be great and fight for something that's meaningful instead of just, even though their names wasn't, the biggest, Janabek is a dangerous challenge.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we do it for.
Yeah.
I knew going over there, fighting Janabek, people would have been tuning in to that type of fight, especially if he would have, somehow beat Carlos Adames, and now he's undisputed. Now you got undisputed versus undisputed.
Yeah.
So it didn't happen. So I was just like, man, you know what? This is God telling me you ain't got nothing left to prove.
I was happy with it because I didn't. It's always good, for every positive story in boxing where someone, retires with their faculties and the money and are good. There's about 1 million sad stories where fighters ended up, sometimes homeless, like gone through all their money, or their managers ripped them off, or they have some sort of mental illness or dementia. So it's good to see a fighter actually coming on top. And everyone asks me all the time, so we're close. Like, is he seriously come? I said, man, the guy that I know, he's a very serious guy. And when he wouldn't have went out of his way to say, I'm retired. If he's not that guy, he's not a Fury, he's not a Mayweather, he's not someone that's going to just. I think that he's actually, he's solid. But let's not skip the Canelo win. So Canelo on Netflix, 41 million people, biggest fight, in the modern era. I had a lot of people saying, can he really do it? And I said, look, I'm not just saying, and I'll be saying because you say it because you're friends with someone or you favour that person. I love Canelo, man. Always loved Canelo. Respected him, man. Red-headed Mexican. I mean, come on, But the thing is, I knew just being around you, not even the skill-wise. I know the skills you've got, and Canelo hates movers like a Lara, like a Mayweather. But I just knew your mentality, mate. And I tell people it was like a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Mamba mentality. You've got that. And I knew that there was no way you were losing that fight. And you know what I mean? And probably easier than probably done it easier than I thought. I'm not going to say I thought you won like 10-2 or 9-3. Definitely, I think 10-2. Yeah. I don't think it was that. I didn't think it'd be that easy myself. I thought you'll win, but you just put on a masterclass. Just run me through that fight before we take some Q&A questions. In there with him, was he thinking, man, like this is easier than what I thought, or exactly what you thought? You can just.
No, we knew what Canelo was going to bring to the table. Like I said, I'm a student of the game. I love boxing, and I, study it. And I've been watching Canelo for a long, long time. So given the fact that I've been studying him and watching him and a fan of his, I knew what he was going to do.
Yeah.
I know the things that he don't like. I know the things that he wants you to do so he can, gain advantage. And those are the things that we capitalized on. I knew he wanted to land the left hook. We didn't let him land the left hook. I know he don't jab as much, so we knew that. So given what we came in the fight knowing, it made the fight not easy, but it's much more, winnable for us.
Yeah.